Uploading now. All right.
Share it. Where can we share? Where can we find it?
Just making sure that it's gonna populate. And we're there. Good. All right. We're recording right now. Okay. I think they're good. All right, Doc. We're gonna get going here in about 3, 2, and 1. Hey everybody, my name is Christopher Velona.
I'm Secondhand Steve.
And this is A Man's Journey. Welcome to the show today. This is a 1-hour live show where we talk about what it's like to be a male caregiver in the caregiving space and all that stuff that comes along with it. Today we have a really special guest, my friend, Dr. Drew Pensky. Thanks, Doc.
Yay!
Pleasure. Good to see you guys.
Good to see you.
Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, we had no expectations, so thank you for surprising us.
No expectation. Well, good. I can know where for me to go, but
Yeah, I was you've done a lot of different shows for me in the past, and I just say thank you again for taking the time. I always refer to you as my brother from another. We've known each other ever a couple years since I got sober. That was like almost 30 years ago.
Jeez, I can't believe that.
Where's the time gone by?
Wow.
I just you've done a lot of stuff lately, and a lot of things that are like really important. Actually, going forward, we're going to talk a little bit about why that's important today. But just to give everybody some background about Dr. Drew, he's has an undergraduate degree from Amherst College, and his medical doctorate is from the University of Southern California School of Medicine, where he remained for his residency. Became then chief resident at Huntington Hospital, Pasadena. Dr. Drew is a diplomat of the American Board of Addiction Medicine and American Board of Internal Medicine. He's also a fellow with the American College of Physicians and has been appointed by the Alpha Omega Honors Medical Society and serves on the board of directors for the Prostate Cancer Foundation. Did I miss anything?
You know, it's funny. One of the things I'm most proud of is that I was an assistant clinical professor of psychiatry as an internist. That's such a rare thing. And I was a clinical director of the chemical dependence program for 20 years and taught through psychiatry there at SC. So I always think of that something that people miss. They don't really understand what that is, but that and the fellowship in the American College of Physicians are the two big things for me.
Oh, that's great. I mean, most people would recognize you from TV, radio, and stuff like that. Steve was asking me about that earlier.
Personally, I've been listening to you since K-Rock with Adam Carolla. And what you've done is you've dedicated your life to helping people and being of service. And I think that is the most, to me anyway, the most credible thing about you. You're a real human being that helps human beings.
Yeah.
Well, and if you have any recovery going in your life of any strike, you always will end up in the same place, which is meaning making, being of service. This is where human thriving comes from. And so I've really been privileged to be able to do all that. In fact, it's funny, years ago, a friend of mine sold a company, and it was a biotech company, and he made a fortune. He goes, all right, now what am I going to do with my life? And I was like, oh my God, what are you talking about? And then I thought, oh, right. He doesn't get to be of service on a regular basis. You know, as a clinician, you get to do that all the time. And people get lost in what it means to be of service. It really isn't. I mean, it's a good idea to, of course, do community service and go to, whatever it is, get on your feet and go down and help out. But ultimately, the thriving comes from one person helping another person. And again, back to recovery. I mean, that's it's the magic of how people stay sober, how codependents get out of their own way. This is an important thing.
Absolutely. When you look at how humans are connected, I realized later in life that I can't help you without helping myself, and I can't hurt you without hurting myself. And to be of service is to take care of that which is not your own. And there's an old saying, an ancient saying, that until you can take care of another's, you don't get your own. And so what I've come to find in my own life is by being there for people, all it does is benefit me. And
okay, so you you just used a packed term in my mind, which is being there. And I'm guessing you chose those two words carefully. What does that mean to you?
If I could bring the whole of myself
Mm.
to whatever I'm doing, even at this moment,
Yeah,
then I'm not just being an automaton through life and going through the
Yeah.
motions.
yeah. So unpack that even further, because I think with that, it's so interesting that we're already right there.
Here we
But
go.
yeah, but that people don't understand, they have no idea what that is. Because they themselves have not had the experience of feeling felt by another person, so to speak, to use another loaded term. And so it's hard to be there for someone else unless someone has been there for you, whether it's a therapist or whatever it is, a sponsor, and it's a subset of that I always coach people up on, which is first listening, of course, is part of being there, right? You must
Listening
listen
until they're empty.
and not fix, but listen. But people think listening is something they do with this organ inside here in their ear. I'm putting my pin up, when in fact it's your whole body. If you can listen with your whole body, that's how people. That's where human thriving occurs. That's where spirituality develops. That's where feeling felt is by another person.
Right. We have to develop the ears behind the ears, just as we have to develop the eyes behind the eyes.
Yeah.
And we start seeing that the world is much wider than we can see and hear. And to be able to take it in, like you're saying, I think that's one thing you've excelled at. And because of your continuing to do that, you're even more developed as we get older.
Right, that's true, and I'm laughing because therapy has been very important to me. Taking my own mental health journey has been critically important in being able to be totally available to other people. And I'm laughing because just when I think I'm good, I've dealt with all that. Oh, here's another version of it. I got to get out of my way here. Here it is again. Good times.
The pendulum keeps swinging; it never stops.
I guess I could just step out. You old people can talk about how much you've come into this world about knowledge. Is that all right? I'm young. I'm not there yet.
You're still in the sandbox. We all are.
I tell you,
Yeah.
it's true what Steve, I only met Steve a few years ago, and I just started to hang out with Steve because we're caregivers. Steve comes from another family with a severely autistic, emotionally disturbed child from his third marriage.
Also known as my teacher.
Right. And of course, you know that I'm dealing with Sebastian. Sorry, not dealing. I get to be with Sebastian on a daily basis, helping him through his current disease. But we were wondering about your thoughts on, you already touched base on it with codependency a little bit, A lot of people in this situation, obviously Steve and I have a lot of experience with caregiving for your own children or your own family members. Can caregivers, in your opinion, get too involved?
Oh my goodness, of course.
What are your thoughts on that with the codependency? That takes it to a whole nother level.
Yeah, you framed it as codependency, and I come to understand that codependency has many different flavors. There's traumatic bonding, there's boundary issues, there's just plain old flat old codependency. There's many things that go on in that frame. But the most basic way I look at it, and I deal with this all the time, most particularly in married couples, elderly married couples, which is I start with one patient, I end up with two, because the caretaking patient exhausts him or herself or makes themselves sick or falls or something because they're not taking care of themselves. I mean, look, when you go on an airplane, first thing they tell you is put the mask on yourself before you put it on a child or anybody else, because you're no good if you were not whole. If you're not able to provide for others, you're not going to provide for others. And we, the co's, the caretakers, let me see if I can get tiptoe into this territory a little bit. We like to be superhuman, right? That's part of people who are codependent. We like to be, it's our own kind of little narcissism. We may not be grandiose narcissists, but we have a kind of an inverse narcissism where we have to be perfect and we have to take care of people. And that's kind of a narcissism.
Yeah, guilty.
And the reality is people really mostly just need us to be present. They need us to be there, you know, like you guys have said. And balancing, you know, the genuine needs with our needs to make things better is really a tough navigation. I remember I used to, when I was early working I worked psychiatric hospital like 30 plus years. And early on, I would get exposed to all these trauma survivors and go, I feel, their pain, I feel like I can help them, you know. And they would just destroy me with demands and manipulations and all kinds of things. And I was like confused and what's wrong here? How's this happen? And so you have to learn how to establish boundaries, and you have to learn how to be whole and present and available without being overtaken. Or the hard part was for me, having your own pain, your own trauma mobilized by someone else's. And I could not differentiate someone else's pain from my pain. I know that sounds crazy, but if you've had childhood trauma, when that shit gets mobilized, it's hard to know where it's coming from and what's going on. And so I do a lot of work to sort that all out. So yeah, there's many flavors of this, and I hate the notion that people would apply pejorative language to any of this. And unfortunately, when I use psychiatric and psychological terminology, to me it's just terminology, just English language. I don't consider it good, bad, indifferent, and people take these things as pejorative, and that's a mistake. So I try to be careful because I use this language so much that to me it's just matter of fact.
Can you
But if people feel bad about it, they really shouldn't. It's just part of the human experience.
can you define pejorative? Our listeners probably
Just they judge it. It's negative. They experience it negatively.
coming from a doctor. Yeah, I'm guilty of that too.
I mean, but you know, look, if I use a term about a personality trait, for instance, and people go, oh, he's a narcissist, oh, he's borderline. No. That's just a shorthand way of describing a human experience, a very common one. And I'm not saying someone has a disorder. I'm saying these are traits that we can kind of group together and understand personal liabilities as a result.
Well, the fact they're taking it personal, that's another disorder.
Yeah.
And then that keeps going into that. And so I got to get to a place where I realize it's not personal. It's a lesson. Can I learn the lesson? Can I
Well,
take
now you're drifting towards a really interesting also territory, which is the spiritual territory, right?
Oh, here we
Like,
go.
you know, and who's teaching and how do I get involved with that? And what do I want out of that? Or maybe what I want is not the right thing. And, you know, I do feel that a lot of people, particularly these days, could look at there are third step prayers out there for various programs, and have a look at it. I think those of us that need to fix and, you know, be perfect and all this stuff, it's very helpful.
And all of it has to do with getting out of our own way, relieving
100%.
of the bondage of self.
Self-will,
I've got to see the trap.
self-promotion, self-seeking, all that self stuff. I absolutely agree. Not saying that self doesn't exist or shouldn't exist, but humility, gratitude, forgiveness, getting out of your way a little bit, that is where thriving again is found.
And I've found it through suffering. I wish there was an easier way, but in my life, it's come from just life itself and everything.
Well,
watching it fall down.
one of the this is something I've not thought much about, but I believe it to be true. It's something that has been presented to me many times, which is that people find their growth, their spiritual connection, however you like to conceive of that, in adversity, in prison, sick, family member sick. This is where people find it.
Yeah, these
Not
conscious
saying you
shocks
can't find it elsewhere. You can, but I'm just saying, when your face is pressed to the mirror, people kind of get it.
Oh yeah, and am I going to handle it different this time?
No.
Because I'm either going to meet it now or I'm going to meet it later. And I need to learn what's in front of me.
Wow.
And being a caregiver is a great opportunity to see the mirror of myself. You know, if I overreact, the client's not making me overreact. The overreaction already has to be in me. All they're doing is showing me that.
But then again, there's the problem of the too closeness of the bond if you're caring for your own family member. Like,
Well, you're enmeshed with them, so you
right. So I mean, like when I hired Steve to come in, I was still doing my control freakism. Like Steve came in and he said, "This is easy," and I got offended, and I didn't realize where he was coming from. He was coming from 12-hour days dealing with his stepson, who was,
nonverbal, violent, big kid.
and so when he said, "Oh, this is easy," I was like, "What?" And so my helicopter dad went into mode, and I never left the house. I was stepping on his toes. I got in the nurse's way, and I probably suffer. I'm going to say it, probably from a little bit of narcissism, because I don't believe that you can do it better than me, and I don't believe anyone can do it better than me. And so now Steve is showing me, and so is the nurse, that I need to leave and be okay with leaving the house. I mean, would you describe that as some of the dangers of, caregiving for your own family and letting others in? I mean, it's extremely hard to let go, Drew. It really is.
For you, everybody has their own individual challenge with this stuff. And I've seen your version many, many times. It does not improve outcome, okay? It often not only makes you not well, physically, emotionally, spiritually, it doesn't help the patient. Sometimes make them, now they have to be responsible for you too. And that's not helping a patient.
Well, I'm guilty. And am I working on that? Am I getting better?
You're teachable, which is your ace in the hole. And it's not coming easy, but it never really does.
I would recommend codependency 12-step would be a way to do it. It's a very simple, always available kind of thing. Like I said, or just go read that 3rd-step prayer. See if you can get out of your way.
I don't think I have time for another 12-step program. I mean, Lordy, we're doing a lot.
Well, you have I don't know if Steve is sponsored people, but you have somebody right there to just do a structured version with him and you're done.
Yeah, no, it was probably one of the blessings that I didn't really realize, when you hire somebody that actually is in one of your other programs, and how great that effect could be. He's been a godsend, really, and I'm not just blowing smoke, but
no, I get it. And look, you're using it to you choked on the word narcissism. To me, that you shouldn't choke on that. You should address it like, oh, that's mine. I have that. I want to work on that. That's it. And if I have codependency, I want to work on that. It's
until we see it in ourselves, nothing can be done. I have to see it crystal clear.
Well, you
not run from it.
You both alluded to the pejorative of that negativity of that word. Codependency is bad, narcissism is bad.
So say you.
Well, that's what I've learned.
If we were at war right now, I want you in the fighter pilot cockpit. I want you, narcissist, alcoholic. That's who I want flying those planes.
I'll Top Gun that all day. Absolutely.
That's right. That's what I'm saying. And so why is it pejorative to have this thing that would help me survive in real bad circumstance?
Because,
why is that pejorative?
In the realm of caregiving and mental health, which obviously I'm suffering from a little bit. I've been depressed and clinically depressed. Those things are like scary terms, and it's like, oh, it's just another thing we have to work on. I'm tired, man.
It's just ways of understanding it. It's all just the same thing.
But if you take the fear out of codependency, maybe you'll find empathy at the end of it. We have to use what's not right with us as our our stumbling blocks, and turn them into stepping stones by making them work for us. And that's what we're building in our own mistakes.
Also, Steve, I'm sure you appreciate this too. You cracked me up, Chris, with the being offended by being told you're codependent. To me, that's so funny. That's so funny. And I've had that a million times from patients, caretakers of patients too. But you get it on the addiction side, you get a different thing. This is not my problem, it's his problem.
Yes.
So okay.
Yes.
The only struggle in this life is with ourselves.
I like blaming
Not against
Steve.
ourselves, but with ourselves.
It's easy to blame Steve. He's just.
I'll take the blame. Take it.
Yeah. So, look, there's opportunity, room for improvement. It's all good. You're doing it's funny we're having this conversation today in the context in which we're having it, because I watched a documentary last night about John Belushi and this was, you gotta remember, back when he got sick, people were just starting to understand it as an illness, and they didn't really know what to do with codependence. And his wife stayed in New York City while he went out to the West Coast to film a movie, because her psychiatrist at the time said, no, you need to set a boundary, you need to stay here and take care of yourself and do work. There was no Al-Anon program, at least she wasn't referred to, it doesn't sound like. And she thought to herself, oh my God, something terrible is going to happen. And it did. So actually, Susan and I had a whole conversation, was that the right thing to do? And I would say, no, it wasn't the right thing. Obviously, there's no worse outcome. I mean, it didn't work. I mean, if somebody had prepared her as part of her program and she was along in her program and she understood that that was a potential outcome of this man's illness, okay. But stay home, all of a sudden, when you've been taking care of this guy all these years and you have a feeling he's not going to make it, you're probably not going to make it. So there's a balance to be had here, right? You have to stay in reality. That's the other part of all this. And doing so, if you have codependency, gets hard. It gets really hard because your denial kicks in, perfectionism kicks in, all that stuff just gets in the way.
One thing I've noticed with me is my instincts seem to be right, but I listen to my head, and which is always wrong.
But not always wrong, though. See, that's the thing.
True.
It's not, you're generally speaking, that is absolutely correct. And your instincts, people would say, is your alignment with God's will or whatever, however you want to understand it. But I think the head is important to let it register its opinion once in a while and just listen to it. You don't have to, it doesn't have to be in control is the thing.
Well, I want Steve to ask. He actually did his homework last night. I know you said you didn't want any pre-questions, but Steve got excited, so he's going to ask you some questions here. I think the first one's good for you, Steve, right here.
What did I write down?
What was I excited about?
Don't ask me what I had for lunch yesterday either.
I'm with you.
All right. What's the most important trait in a caregiver?
Narcissism.
I think, the word patience jumps into mind, of course, that's an easy one, but I would argue that in terms of the long haul of caretaking, balance is probably more important than anything. You're running a marathon, you are not running a sprint. And if you're running sprints all day, it's what drives me crazy about medical dramas in the ER. They're always like, get the defibrillator, lactate. It's like, are you kidding? We wouldn't last a half hour in an ER if that's how we all behave. Instead, it's like, get the usual, let's do it. We'll go in there, we'll do our job. Let's go. You got to stay balanced, center, and then back to the original words Steve used, being there.
Which was a great movie, by the way, with Peter Sellers. You should watch it now and then.
I'm too young to remember that.
John C. Gardner.
If the roots
John
grow
C.
deep,
Gardner. And I remember I
strong.
watched that when it was in theaters back in the 70s, and I had the damnedest time trying to understand it. It was hard to make sense of back then.
It's the story of being, not personality, and it's one of the deepest movies. It's boring if you don't get it. If you're just watching it with your head, you're not going to get it.
Yeah.
Whoever wrote that, beautiful.
Well, we'll put together a list of Netflix later. You want to ask him your second question there?
Yeah, what does it say? See here. Sorry about that.
There you go, Steve.
Okay. Can a caregiver actually help too much? I think we already covered that.
Yeah.
Yes.
And by the way, word of advice for your program, don't give people set up questions. You can have questions prepared yourself, but when people come to streams and podcasts, they want to hang out. They want to have a conversation. They don't want me with my I'm not giving a lecture based on the questions you guys have. We're having a conversation.
All right.
That's
Listen, to defend myself, I've known this man decades, and he's been on my show before, and have given him pre-questions because in the past he's wanted those things at times. to understand what we're going to be talking about, because Drew's a worldly man. He probably didn't expect to talk about certain stuff, so he probably wanted to be prepared. I understand now. I really do. I've watched you grow tremendously in probably the last 10 years. You are enjoying more interviews or podcasts or your own current shows. You're actually more animated. You're more relaxed. You're not so serious. And I like this version of you. Not to take away any of what you did before, but this is the version I know that you and I, when we chat on the phone, this is your, it's nice to see you do it in front of the camera more. So
that's very kind. I try, before it was, I mean, there were so many constraints on what I was doing, and I wanted, I always, back to perfectionism, perfect doctor. That was always my thing. Just answer the questions, and that's that, and make a difference.
Yeah, that was
making a difference. And I was deeply affected by criticism back for most of my career. It just really cut, because my identity as physician was so tied up in who I was, that and especially back in the early days of, I remember book reviews and things when you couldn't really respond. I was like, oh, what? How dare they? And now I am so accustomed to criticism. I'm just try to keep my compass on due north and keep moving forward.
Well, I appreciate that, and I'll always take your tips and tricks, and also let Steve help me once in a while too. And
good. I hope so.
Apparently, I needed a project, huh?
You got one.
That's what I thought. You needed a job. But, so another thing is, like, when we're doing caregiving stuff, and men do it completely different than women. No offense if Susan's listening or any other women.
Yeah, they do it better. Let's start with that.
Yeah,
caretaking.
We just, as guys, I think we still live behind that mentality. Is like, what's the big deal? Your arm is still on. You're not bleeding out. Throw some dirt on it. Let's go. And I'm noticing that my patient, my son, he responds a lot differently to me than he does to the nurse, than he does to Steve, than he does to the personal trainer that comes to the house. And I'm wondering, am I doing something wrong when I take over? Why does he respond to different people at different things? It's almost like he's performing, or reacting differently, which is very, I see it as maybe enduring for those people, but for me, it's like, I'm like, what is that? It's challenging.
Well, I mean, people that need care don't like anxiety, right? Like, so back to early child, you asked a bunch of questions in this. Let me see if I get to all of them. Early childhood development, when a child comes up, 3-year-old runs up and said, I hurt my finger. The last thing that child needs is, oh my God, you call an ambulance. That's not what the child needs. Child needs, got it, I got you, let's get a Band-Aid, calm, caretaking, being there, not catching whatever affect is flying around. Boundary prevents the contagion. Then you've mentioned narcissism a couple of times, and the thing about I had a narcissistic dad, and the thing you become very astute to early is you're responsible for their feelings. You feel that as a child.
Yeah.
And so when he would be upset, I would be responsible in my mind for fixing it. My codependency right there.
Guilty.
And that would be very disturbing and difficult, hard to maintain boundaries and things. And then the perfectionism, you need things to be perfect as opposed to be just as they are. And want to rescue and make better and all those things, I understand, that are good things. This is the crazy thing about these sorts of situations. These are good qualities that get either overused or subverted or sort of exhausted in the process. And then you mentioned women. So that is a function of evolution, the environment of evolutionary adaptiveness, right? Women have a much bigger corpus callosum than men do, which puts them in touch with the right side of their brain, which is how we communicate with emotions. We don't, emotional, body-based, being there experiences, to coin Steve's word, are not communicated much with language. They're communicated with facial expressions, with attunement, with bodily based regulation of the autonomic nervous system, containment. And women are very, very, very good at that. We have to learn it.
Wow.
Absolutely. With us men, what I've come to find is I always thought I had emotions, and then I realized one day emotions have me. I always thought I had thoughts, thoughts have me. And when there's no space there, I am the thoughts, I am the emotion. I'm just a reaction to everything.
Yeah.
And I come to find that no one gets off the hook in this life. No one. And it's a constant coming back to myself to see it. It's amazing how even this, what I thought were small things are not. They have the magnitude of a huge lesson.
Give me an example,
What's that?
if you don't mind. An example,
No, here we go.
if you don't mind.
I'm trying to think of one from my experience, so it's not a theory or a story. Where I live now, there's a wolf dog that scares me because when I was a kid, the neighbor's German Shepherd attacked me. And so there's something in me that just has a terrifying fear of something with big teeth that can harm me. And so he ties the dog up to a tree every day. And I thought it was because I was scared of the dog and he was being nice. And so for 2 months, I was telling myself, I got to make friends with this dog. So finally, the other day, I talked to him and I said, I'll do it, whatever it takes. So this dog doesn't have to be tied up. And he tells me the dog's tied up so it doesn't go to the neighbor's house and attack their dog. And I missed
All about
it.
me.
Yes. And I got to see one more time. I'm believing what this head is telling me. I'm not searching for the reality and the facts.
Yeah, it's sort of a relative, something called the fundamental attribution error, is that we attribute things that are not so to circumstances and personalities and people and places. And then the other lesson in what you described there is the body keeps the score, right? PTSD is a powerful memory source. Yeah. And you need to regulate that stuff. If you've got PTSD, I do, you have to, it'll come up. It's your body will just do it. And then you're in it, and now you got to regulate it.
And I used to regulate it with alcohol and whatever else I wanted.
Of course.
And then you get to a point where, and what does that do? Just hit the pause button. Nothing happens, nothing changes, nothing grows, nothing evolves. And so I have to start with where I'm at right now today. It doesn't matter how old I am. And it's nice to be able to live that way and see that now, instead of living in a fantasy and imagination of, if I just had this, if I was just this way, if my son was well, and all these things I tell myself without just doing what's on my plate today, which I've reduced to the size of a little salad plate, by the way.
And then that requires some humility, right? So these words that people toss around a lot, humility, forgiveness, gratitude, they're deeply meaningful in terms of, back to where we started, human thriving.
I think with humility, I've always, I figured I could spell it. I know the Webster's dictionary definition, but what I've come to find is it happened a little bit maybe when I got to meet who I really am instead of who I think I am. When you really find out who you are, how can you be arrogant? And how can you walk through life with this, nothing affects me, I don't care. It's impossible. You see you're a part of this thing.
Talk more about that. I'm not quite sure what you're telling us. Go ahead.
I think genuine humility, which needs to be maintained, by the way. I think a lot of people, first off, anyone who says I'm humble, they immediately, they're not. It's
usually not. Yeah.
You can't be. It's impossible. Yeah. So what you see is that you're not. It's like I ask people, do you have an open mind? And they say yes. And I said, you just came to a conclusion. You concluded, which means your mind is closed. It's like, can you have an opinion and be open-minded at the same time?
How would you answer that?
Well, everyone has to find their own answer, because you answer from your socialization, your upbringing, your domestication, the way you see the world. Because every head is its own world, Dr. Drew. There's a saying in Spanish, and if I spoke Spanish, because it's much prettier. But when I realize everyone is living in their own world, and it sounds like we're speaking the same language, but we're not.
We're not. Yeah.
And And the real language is that, can I be there? Like you talked about. And as I get older, I'm coming to find I've grown a taste for that. It's something that feeds me. I can no longer stay in the shallow end of the pool. I always thought I was in the deep end of the pool. Turns out I wasn't even on the first step in the shallow end. That's the reality of meeting yourself. What I thought was my armor was tinfoil. What I thought my stallion was my donkey. And then realizing, whoa, I'm not the good guy. No one's ever tried to set me up with their sister. That's the test of being a good guy, by the way. If no one's ever tried to set you up with a friend, you're not a good guy. And I had to see that. And I got to learn from other people, because the blind spot is called me. And so I need other people to see myself. And then when I get a real look at me, that's when I think life really begins. I know how to survive and exist, but I think real living comes from going within.
And let me dig into that a little bit more, which is that you have to understand that self emerges in the context of relations with other humans. If you were lost in the woods at 6 months of age and came out when you were 16, you would not have a self and you would not be regulated. You would be emotionally dysregulated, and you would just be reacting without any sense of anything. And when we are injured, get inadequate caretaking as a child, whatever, to parents, narcissistic parents, abandoning parents, abusive parents, all these things, our ability to connect to others and see the reflection of ourselves in others, that closeness that's required, we don't trust it, it's too painful, and we pull away. And so we end up just in our own head, building the castle around who we think we are, like you say, and then extracting from the environment what we need. That's not a great way to go through life.
No, it's being feral. You look like a human being. You're walking around, you know how to go to work and make money and keep a roof over your head. But inside, it's just, it's the prison. But how do you tell someone to break out of prison if they don't think they're in one?
Well, right. And not only that, it's working for them. And what's inside is very tender and very painful, and they don't want to deal with that. So they stay in that prison because it's the best thing going right now. And they don't trust anything else. And that's why sometimes it takes something painful to break them out.
I talk about why the king's horses, why the king's men couldn't put Humpty Dumpty back together again. They would have put him back together exactly as he was, and he would have continued to falling off the wall every day. And what I've come to find is every time I break a little, I need to come back a little bit better. Something has to change. Something has to grow. I cannot always go to the old. I can't keep putting new patches on an old garment.
Yeah. Do you guys ever? There's some YouTube sort of tapes out there about 12-step by two guys named Charlie and Joe.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
They keep it so simple, and if people want to kind of, I'm just thinking it might be useful for some of the people listening to us going, what are they talking about?
Joe and
Charlie
Charlie.
and Joe keep that. Joe and Charlie, yeah. Joe and Charlie, they do step by step. They keep it real simple, and then they dig in a little bit here and there, but it doesn't have to be that complicated. I know it kind of sounds complicated the way we're talking about it right now, but it does not have to be.
Yeah.
I was taught if someone can't explain it simply, they don't understand it.
I don't understand him every day, so this is a good lesson for me. I mean,
What is it, Chris? The what?
I don't understand half the stuff you guys are talking about. It's good to hear simple, idealistic values and viewpoints. And what I'm going to say is that you can certainly learn a lot from other things in life and other programs, and you can actually apply them to your current situation, and they would definitely help you. It's fun for me to watch you two who've never met have such a deep conversation, and it's inspiring. It makes me feel like, hey, there's hope in the simplicity of life, in the sense of caregiving. Because for me, I'm total fight or flight all day, living in fear.
Oh, good.
And well, it is something I'm working on. I got my Aura ring on. That's a sponsor. If Aura wants to sponsor us, thank you. But I also got, hydration. He's got one too. See, Steve, where's your ring?
Nothing. Fresh out.
But it's like I'm a work in progress. I'm 55 years young. And I'm trying to take care of myself while I take care of someone else as well. Not to mention that I have a 19-year-old who's in the other room who sleeps all day, who knows everything. By the way, that's a whole nother set of stress. But it's neat to see you guys interact just on a level. It's almost like this is Steve's personal therapy session. I'm just kind of hanging on. But for me, I do appreciate it. I do appreciate it because you don't get to hear a lot of it. I mean, outside of I'm talking to my therapist, Karen, you don't get to hear a lot of it, so thanks.
The codependency meetings, you'd hear about it.
I don't-
Just saying.
I remember
Just-
reading,
just-
I think it was Melanie Beatty, Codependent No More, back in the late 80s, when
Yep.
when it first Codependency Anonymous first started.
Yep.
And I remember relating to the childhood stuff and the being just, I can't think of any specific thing in the book. I just remember the feeling that, yeah, this makes sense.
Right.
Yeah, you might even look at love addiction too, because that's another way of sort of the codependency, love addiction. It's other ways of looking at these phenomena we're talking about.
In love with being in love.
Not me.
Everyone
And
I
sort
know
of going
that's
through
like that
cycles
too.
with it and whatever, it's sort of, there's specific things that you go through in childhood that sort of sets it up, and it's common stuff. It is what it is.
Are you suggesting the difference? Is there a codependency versus Al-Anon? Those are two different.
There's different Anon programs out there, and usually people find a program that's sort of suitable to them. It goes from Alateen to for every addiction program, there is an Anon program essentially, of some type that's appropriate, and a big book of their own that's sort of specific to that particular situation.
Well, that seems to be the formula. Like can help like.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, if we're going to talk about how this benefits caregiving, let's just talk about the elephant in the room. A lot of people who are caregivers, who are parents, who are, taking care of either their parents, they're dying, or their children are dying. There is a lot of drugs and alcohol involved during that time to get through that day, because it's extremely challenging. It's very hard. And I've talked to a lot of people in this space of rare disease. This is what they do. They anesthetize to get through the day. And it's staggering how many people will just say, yeah, I do that, and they laugh about it. And my fear is, like, if they get too hammered, they pass out and they can't take care of their kid, and their kid dies.
Of course.
It goes even further though, because they don't want to be here. They didn't ask for this. This is their life now. It's in front of them. There's nothing they can do they can take off, but some do.
Yeah.
But how do I cope? How do I meet these demands? How do I, deal with what's in front of me when I don't want to?
Yeah, and to be fair, I mean, if alcohol is working for you and it's escalating, then you have a new problem. So
Yeah, you just switch problems.
yeah, and that will have to be dealt with. And I understand it may not be time yet because you've got some commitments and you're trying to take care of somebody else, but I cannot emphasize how important it is for the caretakers to be taken care of, to take care of themselves.
Yeah.
I see disasters all over the place.
I like what you said about balance being very, very important trait for a caregiver.
Yeah.
Now, when I see that my foot is either on the brake or the gas, what can I do, Dr. Drew, to bring balance to whatever situation I'm in or under?
And you're someone who's either got your foot on the brake while you got your foot on the gas, for instance. There's no thing you can do, there's no recipe, because everyone's way of managing this is different. Some people it's meditation, some people it's going on a run, some people it's lifting weights, some people it's going and socializing or doing a hobby. I mean, but the point is, you have to nourish yourself, you have to do these things. If you do not, your tank will run dry. And then if part of that, having the accelerator on all the time, is PTSD, you got to think in terms of that getting treated one way or another. And as I said, it doesn't always cost money to do that. You can go into there are culture programs everywhere. They're free. The Zoom has changed the whole world, because it's all accessible round the clock now. And you should do that. And get yourself a sponsor and go through the steps, and that they are designed to help with this kind of thing.
Yeah, helps me.
And me.
Yeah.
I mean,
I know that the potential for disasters is extremely fearful when you talk to others, especially that are close to you. It's you're watching this train that's heading on with a collision with another train, and you can't stop it. And it's crazy to tell people, hey, I see this, don't you want to change it? And they say they got it, stay away, I'm in charge, that whole thing. And it's hard for me, because I want to help people. You want to help their situation. You give them tools and they don't want the tools. You give them resources, they don't want the resources. And then we have an accident. And then after the accident, they blame not themselves, but they blame the patient. And to me, it's extremely frustrating to see that. And I'm trying not to be that person. That's why I had the opportunity to hire caregivers and nurses, and I took it. Because I was that person for a while. I was angry and defiant, and I was
But aren't those the symptoms of someone who's out of balance? Aren't those the symptoms of someone who's overwhelmed and who is just at this moment, it's too much.
yeah.
And so we deal it with, I have to remember the engine light's not the problem when it goes off. It's just indicating something else. So if I get too angry, frustrated, et cetera, I need to see I'm out of balance. I need to see that I need to pick up somewhere, or I need to let something go somewhere else.
it's also being willing to be able to accept reality on reality's terms,
Yeah.
which is, we've been talking about many issues relating to that. But you have to find a way towards acceptance.
That's so hard. That's so hard for me. Boy, oh boy.
Well, we can only take something in at our own level of understanding. So what I see things in you that maybe you can't see. And so I'm trying to help you. And your ace in the hole is your willingness to listen and take that in and marinate a little bit with that. And I come to find as a caregiver, you're treating more than just the client. Sometimes you're the only person that's going to bring a smile to that house all day. Sometimes you might be the only one with a kind word.
For sure. Listen, fighting reality wins. Always. And hidden in the reality acceptance is all of our willingness to accept our mortality, and no one gets out alive, just the way it is. And that it's a very powerful denial that we all maintain. It runs amok when you have a caretaking role.
I've heard people say, I can accept it, but I don't like it. And what my understanding is, when there's real acceptance, true acceptance, there's no room for anything else but acceptance. That's what acceptance is. Otherwise, there's no such thing as acceptance light.
Yeah, right.
And I have to see the truth of it. I can't lie to myself anymore.
I definitely don't like it.
Which is,
well, you could have feelings about it. You're normal to have feelings about it as the acceptance comes in. Of course.
I was notified about some of the things that you're doing differently these days, Drew, and I just want to touch base on it because we seem to be having some sort of a parallel in our lives and we don't even know it. I've stepped away from all preclinical trials, clinical trials, and advocating for that for Sebastian's cures. For those watching in, Sebastian's suffering from Batten disease, CNL8, which there's no cure, which is a brain disease, where Sebastian's missing the enzyme that takes out the trash. Every time we have a thought or a synapsis, there's this puff of smoke that has to be trapped and then expelled. Sebastian doesn't have that ability, so his brain's dying slowly. And so after all of my posturing over the last 12 years, I was told that there was no way that we could monetize his illness, which sent me through the roof. This is a very large organization, pharmaceutical giant, and some people in government. And so I turned towards holistic healings, and Sebastian's enrolled in the energy enhancement systems of scalar wave technology for frequency healing through light therapies here at Bio Recharge in Santa Clarita. And I know you're doing a new show. It's called Health Uncensored. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And you recently had a guest talking about what was it? Oh, quantum tech. About the quantum technology.
Yeah.
You remember that episode?
Tell me more what the specific was it data analysis, that kind of thing?
It was about using the energy around in your room, in your homes, about basically combating 5G and all of.
Oh yeah, there's a few of those out there. Yes, yes. My mind is open to that. We don't. I know that that Robert Kennedy is going to take a good look at it. We'll have finally some answers. Is it a thing? Is it not a thing? Do we need to worry about it or not?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Right.
But I've talked to some very smart people who are convinced that there's something going on. So I'm listening.
Well, I'll tell you, about that. It's something completely different than what we're using here for Sebastian. But and Steve will be my testimony here. He'll tell you that Sebastian, using EE systems, has completely done a 180. He's able to talk, walk, eat, do all those different things that when he was really declining.
When I started here, they were talking about putting a stomach tube in him.
Yeah.
And now he's so far away from that. It's amazing.
Interesting.
Yeah,
Wild.
It's insane.
And I try to be, as best I can, impartial and objective. When
Yeah.
I'm watching this, just like a full moon. You walk into a hospital on a full moon and people are a lot louder and screaming.
Yep.
Until you experience it, then it's not hogwash anymore, and you go, there's something to it. So there's something to this that is.
You might want to check that out. It might be something for you to do some research on.
All right.
Send
me that info.
What's that?
Send me the info.
I'll send the info.
Yeah.
Now we're coming to the end of our show here, Dr. Jerome. We appreciate your time, but
We do.
you guys had a great session. I mean, you could send him the bill if you want. If you want to plug in,
We thought you were the patient, my friend. We
were having an exchange, Chris.
Cheerleading.
Come on, I'm just the host, baby. Don't analyze me. I can't stand it. Drew's done that so many times over the years, man. He actually was one of the I'll say this, he was one of the people that pointed me in the path of being sober after having a liver test that one year, where he's like, man, you're gonna die if you keep going. And I was like, what do you mean? I feel best. I'm the strongest. I'm in shape. Everything's great. Well, 2 years later, I took a chip. That was 1996, September. So I've been sober for about a while. But I noticed you've done a lot of great stuff. You've been talking about your own challenges with prostate cancer, narcissism, and you did Tyler Henry's show, and you're on, Ben Shapiro and all that stuff. And now you got this new show. Can you talk a little bit about your new show and where we can find it?
My streaming show or the Health Uncensored?
Oh, anything that you're doing currently, we'd love to plug you in.
So I do a lot of stuff. I just there's no blueprint for what I do. I just sort of walk through doors. People say, come with me. I'm like, okay, let's see if we can figure something out here. We'll do something good with it. Health Uncensored is a show that's taking form. It's going to be with an audience, I think, going forward. It's on Lifetime. It's in the mornings. It's a talk show about medical topics, and people bring their breakthroughs to me, and we talk about it. Pretty simple. And it's going to be more talk showy as we go forward. Like I did Danica Patrick a couple weeks ago, and more celebrity and more food and that kind of stuff. But it's an interesting show, and it stays true to its mission, which is medical breakthroughs. What's going to make you healthier.
Also,
the show that I do on Tuesday and Wednesday at 3 o'clock Pacific, and many times Thursday at noon Pacific, is Ask Dr. Drew on Rumble. You can subscribe there. You can get a blast at drdrew.tv. It's been a very interesting show. We started as the French Underground. We were sort of doing Facebook Lives, trying to help people understand what was going on with COVID, because everyone was freaking out.
I remember that.
And I developed a relationship with Kelly Victory, who introduced me to people like Jay Bhattacharya, who's now our head of the NIH, and Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who's now our head of HHS. And she had me interview these people. And essentially, I wanted to interview them because they've been canceled. And I figured, why are they canceling these people? What's going on? And I learned something from every one of them. Didn't agree with everything they said, learned something from everyone. And that sort of became the ethos of the show, which is freedom of speech. Everybody gets to bring their ideas here and I'll listen to you. And that's what we've done. And I just interviewed the owner of the LA Times, Dr. Soon Chong, and he had some very interesting ideas that, you know, I'm all about. So pay attention. Check out that show. You'll like it.
Outstanding. It sounds like the world without Dr. Drew is a mistake. So I'm glad you're here.
You know, it's funny. I used to have I had a lecture I developed called Dr. Drew's Mistake, because the whole thing was just, it's just sort of serendipity. It's like, okay, I'll keep going. So yes.
Glad you have.
Are you still working with Vince over there at V-Shred, or are those days over?
Yeah, I'm still been working with V-Shred. We're actually developing some really interesting longevity products that I see that as another place. I'm sort of guilty that I haven't made more of health, longevity, resistance training, diet, because it's stuff I've done for myself and I sort of gave up with patients.
Yeah.
And this is my foray into that.
All right. You want to plug some bone broth?
Paleo Valley, everybody, we were very fortunate. Everybody that we have as a supportive, what do you call a client or we have a name for it, on our show at doctor.com, you can see everybody there, but they are high quality. TWC, Paleo Valley, Fatty 15, longevity, essential fatty acid. These are all so fortunate that these are the people that support us. So I stand behind them all.
That's great. Well, I got to tell you, thank you for joining us. I'm glad you survived almost being canceled back in the day. Thank you for being my family friend, and we appreciate you coming on this show. Basically, you can watch this anytime you want. This is going to be up on YouTube. This is under Bear Giver's channel platform, under a great title called, he forgets every time. This is a man's journey. I'm Christopher Velona.
I'm secondhand Steve. Dr. Drew, thank you so much. It's a pleasure growing old with you.
Cheers, Ellen.
All right. Thanks for coming out.